first thing I always do, look at the title, and try to infer what it may mean for the rest of the assignment. So the title is The Doom of Early African History. Well, I know what all those words mean. But if I didn't know what all those words meant, then I would go to the dictionary because some academic articles have big words or small words that are just complicated, that aren't clear. So doom, not a good thing necessarily, something kind of frightening, right? And in early African history, I don't know, I may not, if I'm reading this for the first time, know what early means. Early and relative is a relative term, right? But early African history means I know it's not contemporary, it's not modern day events, probably not even within the past 50 years. So that gives me a frame. Then I read the after reading the title, I look at the author. And this says these listings and articles don't always say where the person who's writing was affiliated at a time, but we see Jan van Sina is at the University of Wisconsin-Madison at that time, or at least. And so sometimes I'll Google the person just to see who they are and what else they may have done that I would find interesting. And wow, look at there, University of Washington. I meant to say the University of Wisconsin. I don't know why I said the University of Washington. Madison has a nice little overview timeline about this individual because he was a big deal in African history, right? So this is a whole timeline of his work. I would skim that. Now I wouldn't spend hours on it because the whole point of the assignment is to read an article, not to study this man. But I would, do research. So then I next read the full introduction paragraph and then the full concluding paragraph. And then I would do the first sentence of each paragraph. I read the introduction because that tells me what the whole piece is about. And as a framing, it introduces you to the whole piece. I read the conclusion because it tells you how the author chose to summarize what the article was about. And then if you read the first sentence of each paragraph, that tells you how the author developed their argument. How did they go from this idea or proposal of an idea to a statement at the end about what matters most? First line of each paragraph tells you a lot. Uh, and then depending on what the topic is for the week of a class that I'm in, that tells me if I want to read more, if I want to understand more, but that is a beginning. And honestly, I say this because sometimes uh there will be weeks when you're taking a lot of from week to week, the number of classes that you're taking won't change, but the volume of work that's expected of you from those classes can change, especially around midterms, for example. So I give you this model because it's a nice way to do not just something, but to approach your reading in a way that is substantive and that helps you understand something. Some of these academic articles can be very dense, hard to navigate. And if you read every word, sometimes you could leave even more confused than if you had read less. So this is a strategy to help you leave knowing something. All right, so then I will read the introduction, like I said. So the initial paragraph of a set of book reviews dealing with the 16th century relation of a map of Ptolemy. Michel Dumont informs us casually that, and then it's a massive block quote. Sometimes introductions have big quotes because they want to reference earlier scholarship or a particular earlier scholar. And so this is a quote of Dumont, and then I would read that whole, quote. And next we see Venetina saying, quite a statement, exclamation point. How arrogant. Yeah, that's correct. You see that, how arrogant. So this is a kind of this is academic work that's kind of a battle work. Uh, something that well, the author is not a fan of what another scholar has been saying, and they really want to explain what's wrong with the other person's scholarship. So you see that at the very beginning as a way to understand, like, ooh, what is this about? Oh, this is about a person that's trying to critique another scholar. And I imagine that the rest of this whole article will explain what they find critical of this other scholar's work, right? And he says, how arrogant, how graciously insulting to all of those who study ancient and early modern history, And so that's the topics. That is, this is still the introduction paragraph. If Dormant were alone in his views, one might just as well ignore this as an example of regrettable idiosyncrasy. And if I don't know what any of those words means, I will Google it, okay? Or dictionary.com, something to help me understand what the definition of these, because idiosyncrasy is a big word. It's okay if you don't know what it means. Look it up and write in the margins, what that word means. But the cavalier way in which he delivers his opinion suggests that he merely voices a truism, an opinion that he thinks is shared by most of his colleagues. Moreover, such a statement will surely frighten budding scholars, budding meaning future scholars, which in itself is a good reason not to let such a sweeping condemnation of the study of early African history pass without comment. So this is the introduction. Then I will go to the conclusion. In the conclusion paragraph, I see the dichotomy which Dormant highlights indicates a worrisome flaw in the training of historians. In doing away with the formal and practical study of the rules of evidence, history departments have overlooked that training in this skill sharpens one's ability to evaluate evidence critically, an ability that is just as necessary to confront masses of recent sources as it is to cope with the rarer documentation from earlier times. These rules must also be applied to the evaluation of any work of historiography. Historiography is the history of history. It's how scholarship is placed into categories. It is how professionals um, set their path in the field of history. Historiography is shaped by uh, how different historians develop specific ideas about a topic and then continue to engage in that topic through historical research with conversations with previous scholars. Historiography is really important. So it's not just what happened in the past, it's how we know what is said to have happened in the past. That's historiography. How we know what is said to have happened. And how we know is because other scholars at some point wrote about it. Who are they? What did they say? That's historiography. History is the study of the past. Historiography is how we know what has happened in the past. So that's what this is. Even before one considers their style, historical imagination, intellectual brilliance, in the end, it is primarily through grounding in historical method, meaning there's a way to study history that distinguishes historians from others, whether social scientists, humanists, or just writers of fiction. Surely the time has come to reinstate the historical method and its rules of evidence to central position of training historians. So, okay. The last paragraph doesn't say much at all about early African history, but it does tell me that somehow this man, Vancino, who was critiquing Dormant, who Dormant was critiquing the whole idea of early African history. I could tell that based off what the introduction said. Dormant does not like the idea of studying the early history of Africa, right? And now we see Vancino by the end of his article saying, maybe if people return to historical method, maybe if they actually did the work of studying what evidence existed, they wouldn't be so critical of and think that early African history isn't worth studying. So what I know, or what I presume, because I haven't read the middle yet, is that he'll explain what Dormant missed. Because if this man is saying it's not worth it to study early African history, Vancina is going to show, there's some stuff if you don't study it that you miss. And there's some stuff that is worth pursuing through studying it. And so then I would read the first sentence of each paragraph. I'm not going to do it in this video. I want you to do it. I want you to read the first sentence of each paragraph. And those are called topic sentences. A topic sentence tells you exactly what the topic is of the full paragraph. So, for example, 4 main claims are made here. And by here, Vancina is talking about within his article. So he's not talking about just in his article. When he says 4 main claims are said here, he's talking about Dormant. So, of course, in his article, he wrote about Dormant. He's talking about that massive quote that I started with in the introduction paragraph. I hope that clarifies things. Now you can see what he's saying are his main points. One, that there's a dichotomy and a contrast that exists between those who study the more remote past and those who study the recent past. B, or two, first group is small and out of the mainstream. C, its research yields disappointing results. D, its scholarship lacks seriousness and method. B and C, of course, are implicit in contrast to the second group. So when he says these are the critiques, these are the primary critiques that are coming out of the earlier work that Norman is saying, and then Vancina is going to tell us what's wrong with those. So as a constitution of groups, that's the next topic sentence. One may wonder what Dormant means by quote unquote early, ancient and early modern history, and whom he indicates in that category. Meaning, so this is the first criticism, real criticism that Vancina makes. Like, what do you call it early? What do you call it late? And so as you read the first line of each paragraph, you will come to understand what the rest of the article is about. And in so doing, you'll be able to come to class ready to talk about these readings and these articles. And so I want you to try this. Try for all the articles that we have. You'll get better over time. It's okay not to be okay with the process the first time that you try it. But it's by the end of the semester, it's not okay to not understand it because we'll start slow and then we'll build. But all of the articles you have for the semester are academic texts like this. And on the face, they may look a little dense, a little complicated, but we'll do them together. We'll discuss them together the second day of every class. First day, we'll have lecture. Second day, we'll unpack this. So I look forward to seeing what you all come up with. And the best way to have something to come up with is to try this exercise as I just outlined it. See you in class.